It started with pancakes. That's the part that still gets me. Not yelling, not sirens, not some big dramatic scene, just a little girl in a purple headband asking for pancakes after her school play. And somehow that turned into a moment that changed everything. Yeah, that happened. And if you've ever sat somewhere thinking you were safe, just minding your business, you know exactly how fast that feeling can disappear. It was a Tuesday night, nothing special, the kind of evening that slips by without leaving a mark. Daniel Carter walked into a small diner with his wife Lauren and their daughter still buzzing from her performance glitter in her hair, talking a mile a minute about how she didn't miss a single line. Daniel was smiling, tired but proud, the kind of quiet pride that doesn't need to be announced. Lauren was already halfway in teacher mode, keeping track of everything, making sure they had napkins, making sure their daughter drank water before soda. You know how that goes. They sat in their usual booth by the window, the same one they'd used for years, like a little ritual that made life feel steady. Nothing about that moment felt important, until it suddenly was. The door opened and in walked Officer Bradley Hayes. Now, if you've ever been around someone who carries authority like it's a weapon instead of a responsibility, you know the energy. He didn't scan the room, didn't pause, didn't even pretend to be there for anything normal. He locked onto that table like he'd already decided something before he even walked in. And instead of ordering coffee, instead of sitting down, he walked straight over and stood there looming like the space belonged to him. You need to pack up and leave, right now. No greeting, no explanation, just that. Daniel looked up confused at first, like maybe he missed something. Excuse me, you're making people uncomfortable. Take your family and go. Now listen. That's the kind of sentence that doesn't just land on your ears, it lands in your chest. Because you know what it really means. It's not about noise, it's not about behavior, it's about something deeper, something uglier, something nobody wants to say out loud, but everybody recognizes when it shows up. Daniel felt it, no question. You could see it in the way he paused, the way his shoulders tightened just a little. But then he looked across the table at his daughter and she was staring at him confused. Not scared yet, just trying to understand why a stranger was talking to her family like that. And that look. That's what changed everything. He took a breath, kept his voice steady. We haven't done anything wrong, we're just eating dinner. The officer didn't like that. You could tell. His jaw tightened. His posture shifted like he wasn't used to being questioned. I'm not going to repeat myself. Daniel glanced around the diner, slow, deliberate. Nobody looked uncomfortable, except now everybody was uncomfortable, and it wasn't because of him. It was because of what they were watching. He looked back up. Can you tell me what law we're breaking? You know what I mean, that question right there? Simple, calm, but it flips the whole situation, because now it's not about power, it's about reason. And when there's no reason, power starts to look a lot smaller than it did a second ago. But instead of answering, Hayes stepped closer. His hand drifted toward his belt, not grabbing anything, just letting that possibility hang in the air like a threat you don't have to say out loud. Last warning. Lauren could feel her heart pounding, but she stayed still because sometimes staying calm is the only control you have left. Daniel leaned forward just a little, not aggressive, just grounded. My daughter is 8 years old. She's eating pancakes. So I'm asking you again, what law are we breaking? And right there, everything was on the edge. You could feel it. One wrong move, one raised voice, one shift in tone, and this could have gone somewhere dangerous real fast. Most stories like this do. Most of the time, people either back down or things escalate and neither outcome feels like justice. But this time, something different happened. Across the room, Harold Bennett had been watching. 68 years old, owned that diner longer than most people in town had been alive. The kind of man who didn't say much, but when he did, people listened because they knew he meant it. He saw the way Daniel held himself, saw the way that little girl looked at her dad, saw the way the officer approached like he already had a problem before he even opened his mouth. And something in him just decided enough. He pushed his chair back, slow, deliberate, walked across the diner, not rushing, not hesitating, just certain. Stopped right next to Hayes and said, calm as anything. You can put your hand down. The room went silent, like everybody was holding the same breath at the same time. These people are my guests, Harold said. They're not going anywhere. Now you could feel it shift. The weight of the moment moved just a little, but enough to matter. Because now it wasn't just one man being told to leave, it was someone standing up and saying, no, not here, not like this. Hayes looked at him. Stay out of this. Harold didn't blink. This is my diner. That makes it my business. And there it was. Plain, simple, undeniable. No yelling, no drama, just truth. The kind of truth that doesn't need to be dressed up to hit hard. I've been standing here the whole time, Harold continued. Nobody complained. Nobody asked for help. The only problem in this room is you. You could see it in Hayes's face, that moment where the ground doesn't feel as solid as it did before. He looked around, saw the eyes on him, the witnesses, the people who weren't looking away anymore. And suddenly this wasn't quiet, this wasn't controlled, this wasn't something he could just push through and walk away from like it never happened. He muttered something under his breath, turned and walked out. Just like that. For a second, nobody moved. Then someone started clapping, and it spread not loud at first, but enough to fill the room with something different, something lighter. Daniel exhaled like he'd been holding it in the whole time. Lauren reached for his hand. Their daughter looked at him and said, "Are we okay?" And he nodded because in that moment they were. But you and I both know, moments like that don't just end when the door closes. In the car, Lauren pulled out a notebook and started writing. Every detail, time words, badge number witnesses, because she understood something a lot of people learn too late. Memory fades, but documentation sticks. Daniel filed a complaint that same night, didn't wait, didn't talk himself out of it, just did it. For a few days, it looked like nothing would happen. You know how that goes. Things get filed, reviewed quietly, set aside. But then a man who had been sitting nearby posted a video he recorded on his phone. And everything changed. Because it wasn't just a story anymore, it was footage. You could see the approach, hear the tone, watch that little girl's face, see Harold stand up and walk across that diner like he knew exactly what he was doing. No editing, no narrative spin, just raw, undeniable truth. It spread fast. Hundreds of thousands of views in hours, millions by the end of the week. News picked it up, lawyers started calling, organizations got involved. And suddenly that quiet little town wasn't so quiet anymore. The department couldn't ignore it. They placed Hayes on leave, launched an investigation, brought in outside reviewers. And when they started digging, they found something else. 2 prior complaints, same kind of behavior, same pattern, both ignored. That's the part that stings, right? Because it means this wasn't a one-time thing. It means it could have been stopped earlier before it got to this point. 11 weeks later, the report came back. Detailed, thorough, impossible to dismiss. No lawful reason for the confrontation. Violation of rights, intimidation, pattern of misconduct. And just like that, 14 years on, the force ended with a termination. But Daniel and Lauren didn't stop there. They filed a lawsuit not because they wanted revenge, but because they wanted accountability, something that actually forces change instead of just promising it. And the city knew this wasn't something they could argue away. So they settled $1.8 million. Now here's where people start debating, right? Is that justice? Is that enough? Can a number fix a moment like that? The answer isn't simple, because money doesn't erase the feeling of being singled out, doesn't erase the look on a child's face when they realize something isn't fair, but it does something else. It makes the system pay attention. It makes ignoring the problem more expensive than fixing it. After that, changes were made, real ones. Training oversight, faster complaint reviews. Not because the system suddenly grew a conscience, but because it had to, because people were watching. Daniel went back to teaching. His students gave him a standing ovation the first day back, and for once, he didn't have the words. Lauren kept teaching too, ended up being named Teacher of the Year. And their daughter, she told her grandmother she wanted to be a lawyer, said she wanted to help people when things aren't fair. You hear that and you think maybe something good came out of all this, even if it shouldn't have had to happen in the first place. And Harold, he didn't ask for anything, didn't take any money, just said, "I did what was right." Simple as that. But let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. Most people don't do what Harold did. Most people stay seated. They look down at their plate, tell themselves it's not their business, that getting involved might make things worse. And maybe they're right, sometimes it does. But sometimes it changes everything. So here's the question this whole story leaves you with. Not what Daniel did, not what the officer did, but what you would have done if you were sitting there that night. Would you have spoken up, or would you have stayed quiet? And be honest with yourself, because moments like that don't come with a warning. They just show up ordinary as a Tuesday night, and suddenly you're being asked who you are. Do you think what happened after was justice or just damage control? And if you were in that diner, would you have stood up like Harold or stayed in your seat? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take. And if you've ever seen something like this happen in real life, tell that story too. Because conversations like this, they matter more than people think.